Warning signs do people need to see? And that is the topic tonight on the Rita Cosby Show, as we've been getting more details in the last few hours about this madman who opened fire on the Texas school. And I'm talking about 18-year-old Salvador Ramos. And boy, it just gets uglier and uglier. On some breaking news just coming into us tonight, that investigators say that the gunman was actually inside the school for 40 to 60 minutes. Not 40 to 60 seconds, 40 to 60 minutes. If indeed that is correct, what the heck took so long to go into that school? And so tonight, I want to take your calls. We're going to spend the next 2 hours talking about some of the warning signs that were clearly missed by a lot of individuals and a lot of agencies. We're also going to talk about what do we do from here to protect our kids? Because what happened in Uvalde at that school system never should happen again. And we need to figure out what went wrong and where we go from here. The number to call, everybody, is 1-800-848-9222, 1-800-848-9222. Again, the news that investigators are saying the gunman was inside that school up to potentially 1 hour. How could that be? We know that after his grandmother got shot in the face by this guy, the grandmother called 911. Uvalde's only 7 square miles. He drove about 2 miles to the school. Now, he went to the school, we're learning, because she used to work there. And there were Facebook posts where he said, I'm going to shoot my grandmother. Then he actually shoots the grandmother and puts it up and says, I shot my grandmother. Then he said, I'm going to the school. Now, he didn't say which school he was going to, but I've covered a lot of criminal justice cases, guys. And the first thing I would say is, what's, first of all, the closest school? Where does he have a connection to? I would have maybe sent them to the high school that apparently he was a dropout of. The graduation was this week. So maybe he would have had a resentment that he wasn't being, graduating with the rest of his class. I would have ASAP put that school in lockdown. I would put every school district in Uvalde on lockdown. There are 4,000 students, but you have a guy who just opened fire on his grandmother. The grandmother's calling police saying, my grandson is nuts. He's armed. He's dangerous. He is loaded for bear, and he's about to open fire on a school. And he took a car that he really doesn't know how to drive. And then we find out after she makes the call, then he goes over to the school where she worked, which also would have been top of the list if he was so angry at his grandmother in a domestic dispute that he would shoot his grandmother, whom he was living with. Wouldn't you say, maybe what school could she be tied to? Where would he have animosity towards? Where would there be issues? Where would he use as a target to send a message? So I would have gone, first of all, to all the school districts with an ASAP message saying, put those schools in lockdown. Do not open the doors. There's an open shooter case right now with a guy who just almost killed his grandmother. He's in a car. Here's the vehicle. She knew the vehicle. She described all the ammo and some of the guns that he had. And then sure enough, he drives 2 miles at a high rate of speed. That doesn't take a lot of time, guys. We don't know how fast he went, but let's say even on a little country road, 2 to 5 minutes, right? He crashes the vehicle right in front of the school. Then then the guard sees him. There's a resource officer, which was great to hear that there was one at the school, at this Robb Elementary School, where their grandmother worked up until I think it was 2 years ago. So then he's about to go into the school and the guard sees him. The guard calls that in because we know today from Texas officials that they got a message saying that there is an active shooter who's on the outside coming into the school, trying to get into the school. So the guard, it sounds like, called somebody in law enforcement did a great job and said, there's this guy coming in. He's got a gun. He's coming towards me. That guy then has gunfire with him. They exchange gun rounds. And that guard is shot and disabled, not able to move. We understand he's alive, but he was totally disabled. So he couldn't do anything at this point. And then the guy goes in to the back of the school, goes down the hallway. The first classroom it basically comes into is this 4th grade class. And that is where he opens fire again. And then he barricades himself in. And then we know the SWAT team comes. We know that this border agent came in. The border agent is ultimately the guy who took him out. But there are so many questions tonight because apparently this guy was on his social media, this 18-year-old parading around, showing off his guns and his ammo that he bought legally on his 18th birthday. To me, this is outrageous. And that's why I say tonight, there are a lot of things that went wrong in this case. And I want to hear your thoughts because I get angrier and angrier. Who saw that? Apparently, he was texting it to friends, going, hey, take a look at me. I got 2 new guns. He did buy them legally. That's a whole other issue. How could a guy who clearly had some mental issues buy guns? And he may have had a juvenile record. We're hearing he didn't have an adult record because he wasn't an adult for that long. But he may have had a juvenile record, but he clearly had mental issues. Why wasn't that flagged? Why was he able to go buy a gun? Why did the grandmother, we don't know, did the grandmother know he had the guns? She clearly knew he had the gun when he shot her, but did she know that he had the guns before that? We don't know. So if you know you got a deranged kid and he's got guns and ammo, guess what? Maybe he shouldn't have it. And then he was texting friends apparently for days going, hey, take a look at what I got. I got tons of ammo. I got tons of this. I got tons of that. Kids were so scared of him. They were afraid he was going to do something at the school. Did they say anything? I don't want to point the finger necessarily at kids, but did they tell a parent? Did they tell a teacher? Did the teachers say anything? Did they tell the law enforcement? I'm seeing a lot of issues here, and I want to hear your thoughts tonight because I am so upset as we hear that 19 students have lost their lives, 2 adults, 2 teachers who tried to stop it all. And now, tonight, we're going to talk about some of the heartbreak, some of the missed warning signs, and also some of the heroes who really put their lives on the line, like those teachers I just talked about, also like that security guard who tried to stop them, calls it in. You are in a small town and you call it in and say, hey, guess what? We have an active shooter. You just get a call from the grandmother. She works at the school. You should be in that school within minutes. What took so long that they did not enter the school clearly? Because it's not a big school. It's not a big district. They didn't have far to drive. What the heck were they waiting for? Remember in the Parkland case, there were so many issues that they were afraid to go in. And law enforcement had huge issues there that they were scared of the bullets flying. We've got so many heroic cops out there, but there's some serious questions tonight. And I want to hear from you. 1-800-848-9222. 1-800-848-9222. Here is Governor Abbott talking about what happened in his state.
Evil swept across Uvalde yesterday. Anyone who shoots his grandmother in the face has to have evil in his heart. But it is far more evil for someone to gun down little kids. It is intolerable and it is unacceptable for us to have in the state anybody who would kill little kids in our schools.
Absolutely. And now we're hearing that he obviously came from a broken home. Apparently, there are reports that his father was a drug addict. Lots of issues here. Couldn't graduate from high school. And obviously, a lot of problems that were setting him off potentially. Clearly had a huge issue with his grandmother, was trying to evict her. He was staying with her. For some time, they were living together, but he wasn't happy with her, obviously. And trying to evict her and do all these things. But it is a heartbreak situation, and there were so many warning signs. And again, as we're learning tonight, that investigators may have been inside Investigators are saying that the gunman may have been inside that school 40 to 60 minutes. Think about all the rounds that go off in 40 to 60 minutes. And we know that many of them struck and killed these young kids and those two teachers. Think about had they stormed immediately. What were they waiting for if indeed this report is accurate? Now, here is a little bit of a comment from Governor Abbott about the shooter. Take a listen, because he says they're looking into his background. They're trying to discover some clues and what may have been the motive.
The gunman was 18 years old and reportedly a high school dropout. Reportedly, there has been no criminal history identified yet. He may have had a juvenile record, but that is yet to be determined. There was no known mental health history of the gunman.
No known mental health. And when he says that, he means anything professional. If you have a kid who is cutting himself, apparently he was cutting himself in the face as sort of like punishment to himself. He suddenly is waving guns, talking about taking actions out on individuals. Clearly, it's not like something just snapped. Apparently, there were kids in the school who were afraid of this guy. And he was clearly coming from a broken home, but he obviously had extremely violent tendencies. So he didn't get any mental health professionally, and that is the other issue, I think. There clearly were warning signs also on a lot of his social media that he was attracted to violence, that he was interested in violence. That's not necessarily a normal thing for a teenager. And then just minutes right before he's about to shoot his grandmother, this is so heartbreaking. He puts on his Facebook page soon before, "I'm going to shoot my grandmother." And then he posts a few minutes later, how horrific is this? "I shot my grandmother." And then he puts, "I'm going to shoot an elementary school." So how interesting is that? I'm going to shoot an elementary school. That was 15 minutes before he barricaded himself in a classroom and fired indiscriminately at a classroom full of fourth graders. So you got the grandmother works in an elementary school. I'm going to shoot an elementary school. Wouldn't you think you'd put every school in that district, particularly the school that his grandmother used to work at, in lockdown? I am outraged tonight.